the lockdown has been extended here in Italy.
There's been a sudden spike in coronavirus cases in Tokyo.
The Turkish government announced with no warning that there would be a 48-hour lockdown specific to 31 provinces.
Staying at home is a privilege that many in South America simply cannot afford.
Some segment of the workforce is returning in the Madrid region.
The World Bank says that sub-Saharan Africa could see its first true recession in a quarter century.
Eerie, frankly, to hear this unbelievable silence that's grabbed all of central London.
This is the Bosphorus, and it's one of the world's busiest straits. And on any given normal day, there would be non-stop traffic coming through. And right now, it is eerily silent like the rest of the city. You hear nature in ways that you never even used to before. Late on Friday, the Turkish government announced with no warning that there would be a 48-hour lockdown, which caused a mad scramble to the grocery store and bakery. Masks are now obligatory for everyone to wear, but you actually can't buy them, not even in a pharmacy. What the government is doing is delivering them to every single home. You apply online, and every week, each person gets 5 masks.
Merhaba. Çocuklarınızla görüşebiliyor musunuz telefonda? Görüşüyoruz. Telefonla falan öyle görüşüyoruz.
İstanbul'dalar mı?
İstanbul.
It's Easter Sunday here in Bogota, Colombia. You can see that the lockdown is affecting everyone's life on any given Sunday, let alone a holiday. These roads in Carrera 7 would be shut down to allow hundreds of cyclists to exercise and train in a nation that takes its cycling very, very seriously. But nobody is working out ever since Colombia declared a national lockdown on March 25. Now in Colombia, where we have less than 3,000 cases and just about 100 deaths registered so far, the public opinion is divided between those who think that the country has been spared the worst of coronavirus, or that the worst is yet indeed to come. Staying at home is a privilege that many in South America simply cannot afford.
Somos venezolanos y vivimos del día a día, entonces tenemos que salir sí o sí. Si no salimos, llega el momento en que ya no tenemos los recursos, nos falta la comida.
In the early weeks of the coronavirus pandemic, countries around the world were taking aggressive measures to fight the virus. But Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was trying to save the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Now, as Japan's Asian neighbors are starting to come out on the other side of this pandemic, Japan is finding itself in a situation where its problems are just piling up. There's been a sudden spike in coronavirus cases in Tokyo. I'm talking to doctors and nurses who say there's a shortage of beds, there's a shortage of ventilators, there's a shortage of personal protective equipment. I'm talking to analysts who say Japan did have time to try to bolster its public health system, but they chose not to do that. Public opinion polls are showing that the vast majority of Japanese think that the state of emergency happened way too late, and more than half disapprove of how the Japanese government is handling this pandemic.
It's the day after Easter here in Italy. This is also a national holiday called Pasquetta, or Little Easter, when Italians are used to being outside, having picnics in the park and taking a walk around. Of course, today that is still not possible. The government has extended the national lockdown. By and large, Italians have abided by the rules, and the government says that the curve has been flattening. They are looking particularly at the numbers of people going into hospital, into ICU, and the numbers of deaths. All of those have been decreasing, which allows the government to begin to think about a phase 2, a gradual reopening. Depending on how that goes, if they don't see a spike in the numbers of cases, then they can begin to think about opening up other activities.
Here in South Africa, this is in Johannesburg, at the center of African commerce. Sandton City normally would be bustling with people, completely abandoned. All of these shops are closed. Now, South Africa has extended its lockdown. It was supposed to be 21 days. There is some good news in South Africa. They believe that the lockdown is having an effect on the infection rate. But the economic consequences of this across the continent are extremely severe. The World Bank says that sub-Saharan Africa could see its first true recession in a quarter century, and tens of billions of dollars could be lost in output because of lockdowns like this.
It's Monday morning in Madrid, and it's actually slightly busier than it normally would be here. That's because non-essential workers in sectors like construction and manufacturing are going back to their jobs today. That does not mean that the restaurants, bars, or shops are reopening anytime soon, but some segment of the workforce is returning. In the Madrid region alone, that's probably about 300,000 workers or so that will be on the subway system, on the trains, on the buses, trying to get to their jobs.
So this is the Príncipe Pío station, where things are a little bit more busy than normal. You can see inside these subway trains, there's a little bit of space. People are leaving a couple of seats between themselves. This is not rush hour though, and this is one of the main concerns here, is that when these 300,000 or so workers are allowed to go back in Madrid, will you see another spike because people can't space out enough on public transportation?
It's really strange to experience a city that you've known all your life just completely deserted. This is the road right down to Buckingham Palace, and eerie, frankly, to hear this unbelievable silence that's grabbed all of central London. Today, a day in which Prime Minister Boris Johnson is continuing his recuperation at his prime ministerial retreat, and is said to have tested negative for coronavirus before he left hospital. A good sign, surely, but key decisions left ahead for his government in the days ahead. How does the UK get out of this? It faces key problems other countries don't have, namely that the testing here is so far behind where the government would like it to have been. They were initially dismissive. Now, without knowing who's had it, who has it, it's very hard to know who can go back to work, possibly argue. So a country facing some key decisions in the days ahead.